All right, and the recording has started. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming today to this webinar. Today we'll be talking about project managers and how they can support your grants and projects and anything else that you have in the research realm. My name is Claire Pierscala. I am a research program coordinator at the Office of Research and Innovation at USD. I have here Kristen Hunt. She is a graduate research associate at the Interpersonal Violence Research Laboratory at UNL, and she will be talking about her own personal experiences as a project manager on a variety of different grants. Again, this will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel, which I'll be giving the link at the end of the webinar today. So if you want to share that with anyone who is interested, feel free to share that and any other information, as well as I'll be sending this PowerPoint out to everyone who attended the webinar, so you can also share that as well. Again, we'll have time for questions at the end of the presentation, so you can either put them in the chat or you can ask directly. So a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. First, we're going to be starting with what a project manager is, what do they look like, and what are some main roles that they have. When it comes to looking at project managers, we're going to be looking at the features of a project manager, the different types of project managers that there are, some certifications that some project managers have, and just common tasks and roles that they can perform varying on project to project. We'll then be ending with some experiences directly from project managers, myself and Kristen, and how we have assisted in various projects and grants. And then at the very end, we'll have some question and answer session for any questions that are coming up. So let's start with what a project manager is. So in general, a project manager is a professional who is responsible for the planning, procurement, execution, and completion of a project. And now these projects can vary wildly from construction, research, medical, grant work, anything like that. Project managers can be seen in a large variety of companies and organizations. I always like to think of a project manager as, I might be dating myself a little bit here, like a BlackBerry or a Palm Pilot. Their role is to make sure everything is accounted for, everything stays on target, and everything is being planned and being executed in a reasonable amount of time. And so there are 4 key features when it comes to looking at a project manager, or when you're trying to decide on who can be a project manager for your grant. The first feature I always like to say to look out for is leadership and effective communication. The project manager is someone who's going to be leading that team that you have in any tasks that need to be completed, and they have to be the one who knows who is the best person for said items. So being able to be that decision maker on who's going to be doing what for your team, and being able to assign those tasks for the team itself. So being able to lead and communicate what needs to be done. And when it comes to communication, a project manager is there to update the team on what is going on, what are the updates on the project, whether it be weekly, monthly, or quarterly, and just being able to keep tabs on what everyone is doing and what is going on. And then solving lapses in communication. There are some instances where the project managers will need to keep tabs on who is working on what items, and if there is any lapse in communication, trying to solve that as quickly as possible. The second item that is a great feature for a good project manager is organization and time management. Organization is key for managing projects and managing grants. There are so many moving parts in every single grant, and being able to know what is going on, when is it going on, and knowing those ins and outs of every project. Having one person in charge of knowing everything is great, as it helps nothing to be dropped and nothing to be set on the back burner and forgotten. So having one person, a project manager, to keep that organization is amazing to keeping your projects on task, on time, and keeping everything going. As well as time management, knowing when deadlines are, knowing what requirements are, what is due when, having someone in charge of that and having a calendar to knowing how long it'll take for things to be completed and knowing when things need to get done and being able to check in with those people who are in charge of those tasks so they know that those things will get done. Third item, creative problem solving and adaptability. Things go wrong all the time. Things have to change at a split second all the time. I've had many different projects where due to weather, due to participation, we've had to make changes. We had to make adjustments to budgets. Many people, I know all of us live here in South Dakota, weather happens. So having someone to problem solve and adapt the project based on what is going on is essential for a project manager. So having someone who knows how to problem solve and figure out how to change the project based on that, and knowing the ins and outs of the whole project, they can be able to create those split-second decisions as necessary. And then last but not least, motivation and team management. Having someone in charge of a team, especially when there's a large team, is great because then they know who's doing what is going on, who's in charge of everything. As well, this is very similar to that leadership role, but also being able to know what is going on outside of the team and knowing what kind of time and what kind of commitment that those team members have. So if someone has a larger commitment and they need to take a back burner or take a step back of that project due to something else going on, either the project manager can rearrange roles in order to accommodate that, or being able to step up themselves and take on those projects in order to get things done. That is a key feature that needs to be in any good project manager. Second, we're going to look at a little bit more on what does a project manager look like. So for this, we're going to be talking more about what are some qualifications for some project managers, what are some different types of project managers that could be beneficial for your grant, and what are some roles that they can cover in those grants, because every grant is different, but there are a lot of similarities that can be covered when it comes to a project manager. So what does that project manager look like? So there are two different types of when it comes to hiring a project manager. We have internal and external hires. Now, in the research realm and working at a university, most likely you're going to be going for an internal hire. And the great benefit of this is they usually already know the grant and know what's going on. If you choose someone who is a part of your team, they already know who the team members are. They usually know what's going on in the project. So there's a lot less onboarding involved, and there's a lot less paperwork involved when it comes to paying them or being able to compensate them for their time and their work. So these are great for smaller grants and for a good majority of academic grants that are involved in the university realm. Now, if you have a project that is a lot larger or has a lot more moving parts, or maybe a larger grant that is involved, you might want to consider going external and having an external hire. There are many different organizations or a lot of different companies that have project managers that you can hire. And these people are professionals that know exactly what to do. They have specific programs that they utilize, and they are trained in project managing. So they know exactly how to keep everything organized, and they know exactly how to keep things moving forward. So this is really great for larger projects when you have a lot of moving parts. Other great benefits of having an external hire is they can be that objective third person point of view and have a lot less, they can be a bit of a fresh perspective onto the project. So if anything happens or if anything goes on, they can have some new ideas that can come on, as well as they have access to a lot of different resources that you may not know. So if there are some different items that you are looking for new companies or new people to collaborate with, they might have some good insight on people that or organizations that you have not heard of otherwise. one thing to keep in mind when it comes to your grant is to look at any qualifications or rules when it comes to hiring someone for your grant. There might be some logistics or any guidelines for hiring someone for your grant. So that's one thing to keep in mind before deciding on an internal versus an external hire. Now, this is mainly for if you're going more external for hire, but I did want to touch on certifications for project managers. There are two different project manager certifications that if you're looking for someone in more professional realm that you can keep an eye out for. There is a 2-year and actually a 4-year bachelor, 2-year associate's degree and a 4-year bachelor's degree in project managing. And I just kind of list what the qualifications are for these degrees. So if it's something you want to look out for, this is typically for larger companies or organizations. They have a tendency to hire someone who is specifically their project manager for a multitude of different projects. But it is something to keep in mind if you're looking for something larger or if you're looking for a permanent project manager for a variety of different grants. This could be something for you. So I just wanted to give it out there as a resource. So there are some common tasks and roles that come into play for any type of grant work, any type of project work that a project manager can perform. And I split up into 4 different categories: team management, scheduling, deliverables, and administration. And a lot of this has can vary based on what needs to get done or what is required of the grant. But a lot of these do repeat themselves over and over again on every grant that is going on. So first of all, team management. Project managers are there to update the team on project status, what is going on, following up on deliverables from research teams and members. So figuring out who's doing what and seeing if those things are getting done and making sure they're getting done. And then assisting researchers or team members as needed when it comes to those deliverables as well. If they need help, if they need assistance, or if they need someone else to pick up any slack that's going on, that's what the project manager is there for. The scheduling, they're there to keep that calendar. They are the planner, they are the organizer of making sure everything gets done in a certain amount of time. So having those due dates and keeping the team on task to get those due dates completed and getting those tasks completed, and informing the team member of upcoming events and organizing and scheduling and creating agendas for meetings as well. They're there to make sure those meetings are going smoothly, everyone knows what's going on, and everyone is on the same page for those meetings. As a personal project manager, I have done a lot of doodle polls, and so that's one of the big things that project managers are there for, is to get those meetings scheduled and making sure that those agendas are created so everyone knows what's going on. Deliverables, project managers are there to make sure not only if the deliverables get done, but making sure they're accurate and clear. So they're the last round of, they're the second to last line of defense when it comes to those deliverables before going to those principal investigators, before they get submitted, making sure that everything is clean, everything is accurate, and everything is covered when it comes to any deliverables. And then they can also share those deliverables with the team themselves, so then everyone else can kind of get input on what is going on. Finally, administration. Project managers are great at making sure IRB is being followed and compliance is up to date when it comes to your project and your research, and being able to keep all those documents organized. There are a lot of documents, there's a lot of projects when it comes to grant work, and being able to have one person in charge of making sure everything is organized is great, because then they know where everything is, and if someone loses something, they have it. If someone needs something, they have it. So third, we're going to be talking about project managers in action. I have here Kristen Hunt, who is, again, a graduate research associate. And we're going to both be talking about our personal experiences as being a project manager. I'll actually have Kristen start so I can rest my voice a little bit, and then I'll be talking about my own experiences as being a project manager. So Kristen?
That sounds good. Okay, thank you so much, Clara. Again, hello, my name is Kristen Hunt. I'm a graduate research associate at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in the Interpersonal Violence Research Laboratory. Um, my experience is a little bit different because my role as project manager typically isn't that I'm assigned to one project and I really know that project deeply. So, in my experience, because I'm a graduate student, what has typically happened is my advisor will just say, we're looking to get a full-time project manager for this grant or for this study, but in the meantime, can you just kind of assume the role for a period of a month or two, however long the hiring process takes? So, my perspective, I think, is best suited for sharing what I do when I'm immediately jumping on a project, and what that looks like in the short term for just kind of keeping things together. So the first thing that I do, especially if the project has already started, is I just familiarize myself with the grant. I read through the IRB protocols or whatever the equivalent is at your organization or university or wherever you are. I also ask what has already been done on this project and what are the next steps that we're looking to get completed. And then I try to familiarize myself with each person's role on the project. So, for example, if tasks have already been assigned a bit, who's checking the project email, who's scheduling things, who's conducting interviews if there are participants, things like that. Once I do that, I kind of think of project managers as the glue that connects everyone who's working on different things. Um, and I think this comes down to, like Claire already said, assigning tasks that are not already assigned, and then just accountability for having someone to check in with and saying, hey, did this get done? Or can you share this with me when it's finished? One thing that I have found really helpful is that I kind of shift my mindset when I'm a project manager from different roles that I've taken on as a graduate student. So I just consider the diffusion of responsibility. And so if the PI sends a large email to a big team and says, hey, I'd like this thing to be done, I just assume that unless someone explicitly tells me I've got this and I'm going to get it done by this date, that no one is going to do it. So I just kind of take that mindset and then I confirm with, does anyone have the bandwidth to do this? And then, okay, does Wednesday of next week seem like a realistic time frame for you? And that's typically what I found to be successful and took me a while to learn because at first I did not realize that. And then the things just did not get done. And I had to kind of adapt a little bit, which goes back to what you were saying, Claire, about the importance of adaptability because things definitely can get in the way sometimes. Um, I think beyond that, and just the, making sure things that get scheduled and that things are documented, I think also connecting with people on the team on a personal level to the extent possible is really important. Not only is it just fun and makes the work more fulfilling, but I think when you're the person who people are accountable to, it's important to have that interpersonal relationship so that those interactions are pleasant and it doesn't always feel like you're getting on somebody. And then I think the last thing for me is training the new project manager once they're hired. So I'll typically just say, this is what I've been doing. These are the things that I have found to be successful. Here's where we are moving forward. Do you have any questions? And typically it takes, in my experience, like a week or two to get a new project manager trained. And then I step back and do whatever is next. So that's it for me. Thank you, Clara. I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Thank you, Kristen. So a few things I just want to add on about my experience as a project manager is a few items that I have found to be essential when it comes to being a project manager and some things that I found to be really helpful. One of the biggest things I have found is best means of communication. So when it comes to working with your team, figuring out what's the best way of getting in contact with them and what works best for them to stay in communication. So whether it be text message, phone calls, email, team messaging on Teams, I make a note either mentally or physically on what works best for everyone and how they respond best. So I have some team members where I can send an email and I know those items will get done even if I don't hear back from them. Or I have some team members where I do daily or weekly check-ins when things are coming up due, and I'll actually text them directly and make sure those items are getting completed. So knowing what works best for each team member, that kind of goes along lines of knowing your team and getting to know your team, like Kristen said, on a personal basis so that you know what works best for them is really great and essential when it comes to being a project manager. And going along the lines of that team management, I always like to know what the workload of the team is and what those individual workloads are for those people, not only in terms of grant work on what percentage they are on the grant, but what is going on externally in their lives. You don't need to know in detail what's going on in their lives, their family history, or anything like that. But I always like to keep in mind what other projects are they on, how much of a workload do they have on other things, so that way I know what they can take on when it comes to this project, and if I can check in and see if they need any assistance. I can provide that for them, because at the end of the day, I want to make sure our project runs as smoothly as possible and with the least amount of stress as possible on our members. So if that means I need to move some things around to make sure things get done, I make sure that happens. Other things that I have found essential when it comes to project managing is finding a way to keep track of everything and sticking to that way, whether it be on paper, whether it be on a OneNote or anything like that. Finding what works best for you, because every person is different when it comes to being a project manager. And so if one way isn't working and you need to find new ways, feel free to experiment on different types of note tracking software. There are a lot of different things out there, but finding something that works best for you and sticking with that and being able to be committed to that type of note tracking so that you can use that for future projects and being able to use it to the extent that you can. Other personal things that I've experienced when it comes to being a project manager, I have found the importance of keeping folders organized, especially when you have to take your own back burner. I was actually on maternity leave while I was managing a project, and Kristen took over for me while I was on maternity leave for 3 months. And being able to have all those folders organized beforehand was great, because that way it was very easy to transition her over into the role and being able to show her where everything is, what's going on, and keep her updated. So that kind of goes along the line, that note-taking process of having everything all in one place so that you can easily, if something happens, emergencies happen, someone needs to take over a role, you have everything in place and already updated so they can just easily take it over. So with that, we are at the last part of our webinar. So if there's any questions or anything at all, feel free to either type it in the chat or you could say it out loud. I do see we have one question. What are some things a faculty member or PI can do to make a project manager's job easier? My biggest thing when it comes to making our jobs easier is keeping us updated and keeping us in the loop of everything that's going on. Whether that be CCing us on emails or being able to, I know for my personal work, whenever my project managers keep me up to date, I use OneNote a lot. So they are able to share things via OneNote and keep their end updated or letting me know what's going on. That is really helpful for me because I am a very big scatterbrain, which is almost the opposite of what you need for a product manager, but I've learned to work with that by writing everything down. And so knowing how your project manager is managing everything and utilizing that, I always request that my principal investigators to, if they're requesting anything from me, have it written down. Either send me an email or put it into my notes for me. Because if they just tell me in person or over the phone, I'm not going to remember 20 minutes from now, or I'm not going to remember 1 hour from now. So being able to ask your project manager what is their best way of updating them or letting them know any notes, what works best for them. Kristen, do you have any inputs on what are some things a faculty member or PI can do to make a project manager's life or job easier?
Yeah, no, I so appreciate this question, and I think I just want to echo everything that you said, Clara, because The first word that came to my mind when I read the question was structure. And I think a big part of that is that clear communication you were talking about, even just CCing us on emails and keeping us in the loop of what's happening. And then that way I have a framework to where I know, okay, we've got to submit this form on the 28th, and we've got to do this by this date. So once I know that, then I feel like I can do my job most effectively. And I also appreciate it when PIs just kind of check in and ask even questions like this of like, what can I do to make this easier for you? Because oftentimes it's just like a small, tiny thing that once it gets communicated, it can make a really big difference. So that's my spiel.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. Are there any other questions at all? I'm not seeing any. But if you have any questions on anything, feel free to email us at the Office of Research or Innovation. We have our email up there. We also have some links for our webinar. We have our YouTube channel, as well as if you are interested in joining the listserv, we have a link to the listserv, and I'll actually be adding this into the chat here so you can have access to that. Otherwise, we also have the ORI grant search. So ORI actually has a grant search. If you're looking for any grants or want any assistance in grant search, we have a form that you can fill out as well to get any insight or input on that. Otherwise, if there's no other questions, thank you so much for attending this webinar, and we hope to see you soon.